Let's Get To presents Go Go Astros, a focus on H-Town hardball.
And welcome to Go Astros. I'm your host, James Christopher, and Brian's going to be along in a second. Andy is off on a work trip or off on assignment, I guess we should say. But, yesterday's game, and somehow more disappointing than the game on Saturday. But obviously I'm still here, still rocking the Astros stuff. And it's just been interesting to watch the number of people who have jumped off the bandwagon. And the fact is, I'm still on the bandwagon because for me, it's not a bandwagon. Being Astros fan has been a part of my identity since I started to figure out what my identity was. It wasn't a thing I had a choice in. It's a thing that is such a part of me that I don't have a choice but to continue to support the team no matter what goes wrong. As far as what goes wrong, we'll try to figure it out, but I don't think anybody knows. I think, losing Lance McCullers is one thing, but that would have only affected game 3, because he could have obviously started game 3 on regular rest after game 5 of the ALDS, but it doesn't explain Garcia's inability to get outs, and it doesn't explain Urquidy's inability to get outs. I don't really know what's going on with the starting pitching, but I don't, you got no choice but to ride or die with them. And at a minimum, we have 2 baseball games left. And so I think it's best to enjoy those for what they are and as much as you can. And then, kind of figure out the rest of it. But, the concept that there are many Astros fans, again, already giving up on the team. It wasn't over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor, and it's not over when you're down 2-1. They still got to get 27 outs tonight and 27 outs tomorrow. And if one of those games turns the Astros way, then it goes back to Houston. And I think we all know how well they play at home. So, yeah, this thing isn't over. It's not far from over. The Red Sox don't think it's over. The Astros don't think it's over. And I really wish Astros fans also didn't think it was over. And now one of the smartest guys on Astros Twitter, the guy who researches everything and the guy still waiting for Terry Poole to keep coming through, Brian Arbor. So, yeah, Brian, we're jumping on with Brian. And, Brian, not the result we wanted. It's funny to me where we, as a collective, you, Andy, and I both said losing McCullers is not going to cost us the series, and it's still not going to. But are you surprised at just how bad the starting pitching has been, considering it really was a strength of the team throughout the season?
Yes. And this has been, they've gotten, they have an ERA over 9, right? They've given up more runs than they've gotten outs. And so that's something, I didn't expect them to go deep. I didn't expect any of these guys to go 7 innings. I knew sort of middle relief would be an issue in this series, but, Framber pitched kind of sort of okay, and then they got him out quickly. But, obviously both Garcia and Urquidy got shelled. They didn't last long, not because it was a strategic decision. They didn't last long because, well, they weren't getting anybody out.
Yeah, there was definitely a part of me when the grand slam happened that I thought, okay, Urquidy has to eat this because the goal here is to win one game. I really think you win one game, you get this back to Houston, and anything can happen. What is your prognostication feeling like they can do that? Can they win today or can they win tomorrow? What do you feel like? And which one of these games gives them the best chance to do that?
Yeah. So, the cliche in baseball, right, is momentum is your next day starting pitcher. So that's good. But then we look at our starting pitchers and go like, well, they need to pitch better. And so that's sort of the, that's the concern here. Can they? Yeah, this is a team, again, best hitting team in baseball this season. They, should be able to bash some runs. On the other hand, they just keep getting, giving up double-digit runs in 2 straight games, and so they give up 9 and then 12. So they average double-digit runs over the last couple of games, and you can't expect your offense to overcome that. Clearly, they haven't. So, big thing today is to hit and get some runs. You get more than 3 runs, or they get more than 5 runs, and then from a pitching standpoint, it's how can they piece things together to get some outs in this game. And that'll be a big question. Zach Greinke will start on the mound. I don't know how long he will go. I don't think it'll be that long. but his ability to get some outs, to get them, to get them 2, maybe 3 innings and hand the ball over to Christian Javier will absolutely be key today.
It just feels like all this team needs is the sign that they can get through 3 innings and have the Red Sox shut out or maybe scored a run to just sort of release that pressure. I mean, and I don't know what these guys are feeling. I actually, it looks to me like it doesn't bother them. And I think that's exactly the way you should play baseball. A lot was made of Carlos Correa kind of letting Rodriguez off the hook for the watch thing. And I'm glad he did. I mean, that is what baseball should be about. Carlos started it with the watch thing. And of course it's going to be a callback. Just overall though, what is your sense that the team, are they feeling overwhelmed? Are they feeling over nervous? Or is it just to them, they did this last year, they can do it again this year?
In both times they've advanced to the LCS, they've been behind in both series. In 2017, they lost those 3 games in Yankee Stadium. I went to 2 of them. Not some of the most fun times I've had at a baseball game. But they came back and won. They won the 2 in Houston. They were down 1-0 to the Yankees in 2019. So they've been down a game before in a series. Today is technically not a must-win, but it's as close to a must-win as a not must-win game is. So that's some level of pressure. On the other hand, but the infield's all played 65 playoff games before. They shouldn't be worried. They played half a season of baseball in the playoffs, and they've been in situations like this before. And I don't expect them to be. I expect it to be a baseball game today.
Do you one of the things that I was really looking at was it does seem like we're not getting the same power numbers out of the lineup. Bregman really hasn't been hitting the ball out of the ballpark really since his quad injury. You think that's what it is, or do you feel like, is it just a lot of bad luck?
I mean, they've scored 5 and 5 and 8. So they've averaged 4 runs a game this series, or just a little bit above that, which is below their average. But they average a ton of runs in the White Sox series. So I think it's the nature of the Astros lineup is they have 7 really good, high quality, above average hitters. You have an 8th average or above average hitter when you have McCormick or Myers in there in the A spot. It's not great on Miles Straw. So if one guy's slumping, the other guys take up the slack, and that's what we've seen for the most part throughout the season. So I'm less worried about the offense. I'm never worried about the Astros offense because their offense is, one day away from having a breakout game. And we had similar things, talking about game 3 of the White Sox series where they didn't score a run for the last, 6 or 7 innings in that game. And they came out the next day and scored in 7 of the 9 innings. So,
yeah.
I can look at some individual batters who aren't having a great series right now, but can they break out today? Yeah. And none of them is 0 for 20. So I don't necessarily expect them to be so mired in a slump that they can't get out of it.
Yeah. And I think the disappointing thing for me is that actually the middle relief and the end of the bullpen actually has held up relatively well, considering the task they've been asked to do. I think Maton has shown this postseason that he is a piece for the future. But the one thing that we've sort of all talked about is that the future of the Astros is still very bright. The window is still very much open, but the focus is shifting to now this young cachet or this young crop of starting pitchers. How much of that shine is wearing off on this series, if at all, or is this just too small of a sample size for young pitchers?
It's too small of a sample size, despite the fact that we're really, really focused on it. The future of each of these players, particularly the young arms in the rotation, Fromber, Luis Garcia, Jose Urquidy, is much more determined by the 25 plus starts they all made during the regular season than in Urquidy's case, the one bad start he's made in the postseason. Obviously, it's a big deal because you care about these 3 games much more than any regular season game.
Right.
And certainly our anxiety and my liver can tell you that because, again, what we say in the regular season is some nights like that. Some nights you don't have it. You just say whatever and you move on to the next day. Well, the consequences of that in 1-162 is not a big deal. The consequences of that in 1-7, right, is you now are behind the 8 ball again. Team's been here before. Don't think the players are going to do anything different than what they've done before. They've come back from deficits before in the American League Championship Series. They've come back from deficits in the World Series in 2017. So I don't expect any of that to phase this team. But, the big worry is you have a pitcher you don't really trust starting the game. You have Javier going to come in after that, who is, hopefully the Javier of, the starter early in the season rather than the bullpen guy who was wobbly at times. And so,
and although he's been
that's
very
a big
good this
worry.
postseason, I mean, that's the thing.
Absolutely.
Javier has been very good this postseason. So how do we piece this together? So is the bright side of Valdez not having a lot of pitches in game 1, Luis not having a lot of pitches in game 2, and Urquidy not having a lot of pitches in game 3? Does that mean that those guys can come back a little bit earlier? Can they give you an inning tomorrow if you need it? I mean, how do you piece all that together?
I mean, so it'd be really great tomorrow if we got a good, 5 to 6 innings from Fromm. And there's lots of reasons to think we can get that. Obviously, you worry about tomorrow when you're down a game.
Yeah.
And so,
but do you think is Fromber the starter tomorrow? In your opinion, I don't think they've made that official.
I don't think they have, but I would assume that Fromber's the starter tomorrow. He'd be on regular rest, and there's no reason to think he's, he shouldn't pitch. And obviously, you don't have a lot of better options either. So the bigger issue will be who they pitch in game 6 or game 7. Certainly, I expect to see today. Obviously, we don't expect Greinke to go long today. If they got multiple innings out of him, they'd be happy. And same thing with Javier. They didn't pitch Presley or Graveman yesterday, so I think there's lots of reasons to think you could go more than an inning, particularly with Presley, possibly 4 or 5 outs, maybe 2 innings, maybe pushing it. But they're a little more careful with Graveman, so I don't know if he will go longer. But
yeah,
it is the playoffs. It is close to a must-win game. You probably see something. You may see him get 3 outs. You may see him asked to get 4 outs.
I mean, and the reality is, if you can get 3 out of Greinke and you can get 3 out of Javier, and then you can get an inning from Graveman and an inning from Presley, that's just finding someone to throw that one inning, that 7th inning. And I don't see why you couldn't bring Stanek back. I don't see why you couldn't bring, I don't remember how far Maton went yesterday, but it seems like at this point, it's all hands on deck.
Yeah. And you're again, it's not an elimination game, but it's really close to an elimination game. And absolutely. And, may cause you problems tomorrow, but when you worry about tomorrow, and you figure out the plan for tomorrow, because winning today is a really big deal. But again,
because if you win today, it takes so much pressure off tomorrow. I mean, you almost could, not that you would ever punt on a game, but you could almost say we're setting up for being back in Houston 6 and 7.
Yeah. Or, you have your best pitcher your current best pitcher on the mound, a guy who led the team in ERA this year, tomorrow. So if you can win today, you like your chances tomorrow, as frustrating as Fromber was in game 1. You've got a much bigger body of work that he should pitch better than that in game 5. So try to, win today.
What I love about the dynamic of our show is I think all 3 of us are different personality types, but I definitely think you and Andy tend to lean a little bit more. You're much more intellectual. I think you're much more pragmatic. I'm definitely a little bit of heart, a little bit of fire, a little bit of whatever. And one of our good friends of the show that I love, Astros Fans UK, George out there in London's a big Astros fan. And he said he's going to be taking receipts of everybody that's bailing on the Astros. And he is going to remind them because this team isn't going anywhere. And this team will be good next year, regardless of how this one goes. Does that bug you when you see, again, the hallmark of our show is that all of us are above 45 years old. So all of us have lived through a lot of down. Does it bug you to see people jumping off when you didn't jump off when they were losing 100 games?
Here's the thing is we have much more access to people's emotional reaction via social media today. And I assume people would have said terrible things on social media about the Lenny Dykstra home run back in Game 3 back in 1986 had there been outlets, and people probably said that in their bars and barbershops and living rooms back then. And you can find similar things, I'm sure, through the 90s and all those, through all the terrible series against the Braves or that one awful one against the Padres. So one thing about social media is we have more access to what people think, and also a lot of those thoughts are really disposable, both in terms of we're all sort of fickle in the moment, and that's for as much as we try to be sort of analytical and have a longer perspective, we you and I and Andy have that too in our moments. And that's, my sort of reaction, that's normal. And, there's nothing on social media that people weren't saying before. We just sort of see it otherwise. So I'm willing to. So I will say this, I will enjoy watching Astros UK's receipt post when they come.
And it's funny because I guess maybe my previous experience, like I don't want any of these guys on Astros Twitter in a foxhole with me, man, because they're not when the going gets tough type of people.
This is why probably the media, why the Army doesn't train people through social media, and I think we can all agree that's it. That's I'm not a military strategist. I haven't served. I feel that's probably a good thing.
You're probably right. I guess so. Make a call on today's game. I mean, I wake up this morning and I feel optimistic. I feel like I just think 162 games tells me they're better than the Red Sox, and I just think that this is the day that they get it flipped. And the filmmaker in me loves the idea of a Greinke comeback story.
Yeah, it's a it would be a great story. It's someone he's got as much knowledge about how to pitch as basically anybody, and it's got as much experience, including both regular season and postseason. So, yeah, it absolutely would be a great story. The Red Sox pitcher is probably their most average pitcher. Their starting pitcher, Nick Pivetta, today. So he's someone who, you like the Astros' chances of scoring a few runs off him. So I don't think it'll be a low-scoring game. Again, Javier has pitched really well in the playoffs, so hopefully he straightens some stuff out. We'll see him for multiple innings today, and I think he's a big key to the Astros being able to win this game. If they can hold down the Red Sox, say innings 3 through 6, that's a big key.
That'll be ideal.
Getting the ball to the back of the bullpen.
I feel much better about the back of our bullpen than I think the Red Sox do about theirs. They just have happened to have 9-run cushions when they get to them. All right, Brian, we'll be back tomorrow. Good luck tonight. Go Astros.
Go Astros.